Good morning. This is our conversation for our assignment for NAXI. Today I'm going to be interviewing Mr. Stuart Johnson, and you're just going to be coming along to hear all the wonderful information he has to share. Mr. Johnson, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, Nanda.
Today we want to talk about your political aspirations. What made you first interested in politics?
Well, you know, Shananda, from a very young age, I've been interested in helping the community, doing volunteer work, assisting in high school with different clubs that were there, like the Interact Club, the Rotaract Club. There were different organizations in school that I was always a part of. And when I was 21 years old, I was approached by our now Prime Minister, the Honorable Ms. Sarah Westcott Williams, to be a part of the party, to be a candidate in an election. But prior to that, I always was a part of the Democratic Party, from since the age of 14 by joining the youth wing, the youth section of the Democratic Party, and from then I became its president, and to date I was the youngest president of the youth wing itself.
Okay, I'm just going to ask you, what was the first occasion that you postulated yourself?
Well, the first occasion I postulated myself was for the 2006 federal elections. I was only 21 years old, and at the time our Prime Minister was then Senator in the former Netherlands and Tills government, central government. And in that constellation required her to travel quite often. So prior to our meeting starting, it was kind of a spur of the moment kind of decision. I went there to hear candidates for the party, another election, another moment to hear the candidates and see who it was. So I was sitting down in the audience and making my usual commentary about, oh, I wonder who's going to be representing us this year. And when our leader arrived, I was asked to meet with her privately. And our leader, the Honorable Ms. Sarah Westcott Williams, who was our Prime Minister, asked me to run and encouraged me that this was the moment that she would need me more than ever to support and help to build the party. So with that, I made a phone call to my parents, and they of course supported me and embraced my decision. And I also called one or two close persons that I knew politically, if they would be able to advise me, and everybody was like, go ahead, it's a start. And from there, I became, today, the youngest person to have postulated myself as a candidate in a political party at St. Martin.
And what experiences did you have prior to that that made you feel comfortable or confident enough to be able to fulfill that role?
Well, you know, in the community, besides being active in school, I've been very busy in the community itself. I've been a part of several organizations, and besides youth groups and culture groups, I've also been a part of political and environmental organizations, a part of media interviews, a part of organizations that allowed me to travel to regional and international conferences, such as the Rotary Convention, the Rotary RILA program, which is a youth leadership development program that allowed me to sharpen my leadership skills and allowed me to get further training on how to be an effective and a useful leader, because some leaders, they know everything on paper, but when it comes time to practice, it's a bit different. So with all those life experiences behind me already, I felt comfortable and fulfilling a role that I felt I could be more useful with for the community, and finally, as a young person, show how serious I was, not only in words, but in actions, by postulating myself on a political party.
That's a lot of weight to put on a young person. Have you ever been in a situation where people would have to vote for you or give you their confidence for you to be able to obtain a certain position?
Well, you know, in high school, I was again very vocal, and part of the student government elections was that you had to postulate yourself or be nominated. I was nominated for a position that required 2 or 3 other persons to fulfill that role. And when the position was made known and all the nominees were selected, I was the 3rd person to be able to fulfill that role, and I was for Public Relations Officer of the student government of the St. Dominic High School. In that alone was a strong indication that I needed to do more, to see really how confident my peers was about my ability and my ability to go forward with in life, being a leader. During that election, I was in 3rd form, and the 2 other opponents were in 4th form and in 5th form respectively. And when the election came, election day, we had our speeches and I had banners and I did all that I could have done the response after my speech and the receptiveness to my candidacy proved to be a victorious one. I won that election for that position. And it was even so surprising that the school itself did not publish the results. The results were just mentioned that it was a landslide victory for me, and those results were never really published during that particular election. Again, to this date, I will never know the numbers, but what I did understand was it was quite a big margin between my opponents and I. So that kind of was the initial push. Then, you know, after that, both of us were in USM, and being a part of USM, I saw something that, again, I could have put my positive influence in, and that was the Student Government Association. And having been the president, and again winning the confidence and support of everyone as the president of the student government, and then being now the first official president, because of my presidency, and we were able to get it officially notarized and a recognized foundation, association by the notary, that allowed it to get extra funding, allowed it to be pushed further in terms of activities that it could do. And today, that is another testimony that I felt comfortable in being able to fulfill that role where my peers had to vote for me, like you mentioned, and where confidence was bestowed upon me.
And how can you compare, for example, running for political office of the island of St. Martin versus you at the University of St. Martin?
Well, you know, there are some similarities, but this is on a wider scale. Running for country, in the last election I ran also for the first country elections. On a wider scale, there's more dynamics at play. There's much more that you have to be mindful of. There's different ethnic groups, there's different beliefs. You have to cross and transcend across different cultural values that each culture shares differently. You have to be a transparent person in terms of your objectives. You have to be clear on what you want. But the difference between the two are, one, in a university election, there really is that ideal scenario where solutions and issues become a priority. There was no vote buying, there was no other things that you had to do if you wanted to be a big proponent in an election. In a national election, though I never subscribed to that belief, I never bought a vote, the successful candidates that pulled in the 1,000 votes or more, those were some of the things they would possibly have to subscribe to. So in a national election, the difference would be on a wider scale, how you're going to meet your goal, your target, in terms of the number of votes you intend to achieve, and two, how successful is your candidacy going to be? What are you going to measure that success by? Is it by the number of votes, or is it that you stood for a message, and at the end of election night, that message was maintained, and you were able to keep your character and your integrity intact?
Good. And what is your current political standing?
Well, you know, being a school manager now today, and having run in previous elections under a now administration that still I form part of its membership as it leads and forms part of the current coalition government that we have in St. Martin, it has allowed me to prioritize my professional life in terms of being a school manager. Now is priority number one. I see myself in a different light, completely is in a role and responsibility that does have political effects, both pro and con. However, I have never let my political history or my political influence affect my job in any way. I don't pass that on. It is what I believe in separately. I don't confuse professionalism with politics. And as seen in previous administrations of the government, I've been able to work with past ministers. I've been able to be entrusted with the post that I have now as school manager by someone that was on a political party opposing the one that I'm a part of. And after that, placing her confidence in me, she then allowed me to be in this program today and also reaffirm my position in the seat I have as school manager. So not only was I selected to be in her seat, I was also allowed to maintain that seat by receiving this training program, the adequate training to be able to be an effective school manager.
And does that change your outlook on the political process and how politics should be done in St. Martin?
Indeed it does. It reaffirms actually what I believed, and that is there is a time now in our history and our development as a country that we need people that sincerely believe in going forward with St. Martin, not individual agendas, not a family dynasty. There should be that person or those persons elected and trusted with the responsibility of leading this country into solutions for the long term, whether it's energy, whether it's our school system that needs adjusting and tweaking, whether it's our infrastructure that needs upgrading. There are sufficient manpower, there are sufficient young persons that could be pulled in to our country to do what they have to do, but it just takes leadership, it takes vision, and it takes a sincere heart that is not there about a mighty pocket, but about the big heart that they want for this country.
Okay, so I know that you probably have a vision. What is your vision for yourself politically in the next 10 years?
Well, you know, being school manager, and again, starting as a teacher, now becoming a school manager, but before I could start to be a teacher, just being a student, every time I reach an increment or a step, I believe it's another step forward and another push forward. I couldn't be a school manager without being a teacher. Couldn't be a teacher without being a student. So I believe the next step for me would be quite possibly a ministerial role. That is a goal that I have in mind. And after that, the sky remains the limit for whatever potential I see after that step. But I've never limited myself in terms of, I'm now a school manager, I'm going to stop here, that's the end of the road. That has never been my life lesson. My life lesson has always been to push beyond and keep pushing. Because, you know, true leadership always keeps going. There's always a vision. A leader doesn't maintain one particular situation or one particular goal. They always keep looking for further goals and further visions as time rolls on.
And what do you think you need to do in order to achieve this goal in the future?
Well, I think what I need to do is continue to be sincere and passionate about what I believe in, continue to be transparent in all that I do, including my role as school manager, being able to show that I do believe strongly in a team effort, that there is cohesion and cohesiveness within staff, and that transcends into future aspirations. When persons can see how you handle a supervisory role, such as a school manager or managerial post, they will then see further abilities. In our last staff meeting, a teacher remarked in our staff meeting how surprised she was and how honored she was to serve under me as her school manager. Before we were colleagues in education, a different position, a different perspective, but now as school manager, she was able to see me in my full potential, she said, saw what I was capable of. And many times when I was teaching, I would say to myself, this is only the first step. Don't get demotivated, continue pushing on, because I knew deep in my soul, being a teacher was not the end of the road for me. This was just a learning step. And sometimes in life you want to push beyond, but I know between hope and future, those two would meet hand in hand, and they would be able to put me in this seat. So I did remain hopeful that the future would have put me here, and through my strong faith and conviction and hard work, allow me to be in this position that I am in today.
How do you see your role in the future, for example, as a family man? How do you see that intertwining with your political aspirations?
Well, you know, family life is something that happens naturally. It's a choice we make, and with those choices, there's consequences. It will allow me then to once again reprioritize my life. If I'm going to bring forth a sibling or a child into this world, that child will be priority number one. Everything that I do or everything that I hope to do would have to be with family first. There are times, if entrusted with a political responsibility, that I would have to miss family opportunities, family moments. I've seen that with my political leader, that for instance with the birth of a grandchild, she had to be in a political meeting because nationally the country required her to be there. Those are certain sacrifices that the family too would have to understand, that despite wanting to be there, despite feeling the need to be there, and ideally should be there, you should be there, that sometimes the situation, the trust entrusted upon you by the people outweigh that. So family sacrifice would have to be a part of the culture in our family. It would have to be something that would be understood by both my wife and my child or children, and that would also form into the prioritizing that I mentioned.
Who would you say, or what would you say is your political inspiration? It could be a person on St. Martin, it can be something that you saw. Who gives you that inspiration politically?
Well, you know, politically, there's no one particular person I can pinpoint politically that has inspired me. I look at both local, regional, and internationally persons. I look at, for instance, locally, our Prime Minister now, in terms of her energy that she exuberance throughout life, and her knowledge, and being able to be so versed in speech and in writing. That is one asset that inspires me. Another asset that inspires me locally is, for instance, the leader of an opposition party, the United People's Party, how he is socially with people, Mr. Theo Heiliger, that he's able to move around the community flexibly and also be able to relate to all walks of life. I look at regionally, regional leaders that have been able to be the first Prime Minister in Jamaica, the first Prime Minister in Trinidad as a woman, that went beyond differences. I look internationally in the United States, where, for instance, President Barack Obama transcended racial differences and moved beyond what was expected, that he was able to get elected despite the odds against him and perform. I look at, for instance, former State Secretary Hillary Clinton, in terms of being a woman that was able to get 18 million votes in a runoff election with Barack Obama, that he was able, with her, to both show that there can be an African American in the White House and there can be a woman that can also lead America. So those 2 days I would like to see. I would like to see now a woman lead the United States of America, like I've been able now to see an African American lead the United States of America. Those are the different values that I would like to see, and those are the differences I'd like to share locally in terms of my own aspirations. Like I said, the difference between a woman leading and a male leading, we have had that. But when you look at each asset or each character in everyone, I tend to take out what I feel would apply to me, and those I feel are applicable in my view.
Okay, what would you say could be some pitfalls or some downsides in being a political person on St. Martin?
Well, you know, we live in a small country, and some of the shortcomings that you have to face is, one, you're labeled automatically as being tied to that political party. Your job tends to be under a different light, a different scrutiny, where you're always aligned to a particular political party. And any decision taken in favor of you or against you is based on your political affiliation or influence. So in a small community, politics plays a central part, whether we want to admit it or not, but politics does play a pivotal role into where we are as a nation. But collectively, between your professional life and your influence in terms of politics, you always have to find that balance, and sometimes it's challenging, but sometimes it pays off.
What would be one of your most memorable moments, be it good or bad, while running for office in St. Martin?
One of my most memorable moments, I would have to say, would be the time when we had the 2007 election, whereby we were in our campaign headquarters, and it was after a day of campaigning and being on the road, and also being a part of the day activities, because, you know, on St. Martin, it's not only about the election day, people go out to vote. You have to get people out to vote, you have to go pick them up. Then you have motorcades, and you have to visit the polling station. And after you finish by each polling station, as a candidate, you're assigned to a particular polling station where you have to be the representative for the party to count the votes and to make sure that it's verified that your party receives the number of votes, and if there's invalid votes or votes that were marked funny, that you can protest against them, that they could count it positively. After all of that, we went back to our headquarters individually, and food was brought for me by my sister. And my political leader, Ms. Sarah Westcott Williams, did not have anything to eat. And though it was a small meal, I offered it to her, and she was very appreciative of that. That, you know, though it was something that was hardly shareable for one person with someone else, that just the very thought of, you know, showing some kind of humanity was displayed. And those are one of the reasons you go into politics. You do it for the love and to show humanity to others.
You mentioned your sister. How has your family shown support to you and your political dreams and what you have been through so far?
Well, politically, I've always had my family support from day one. At times, we've had family discussions, and we would agree to disagree in terms of the approach, but a lot of trust was put into me, and a lot of the doubt in terms of how things would go would be removed in terms of me being able to handle, for instance, a national debate, if I was able to look at something differently. So it was more of a self-reflection was provided to me. Mind your body language, maintain a certain composure, show some humanity, make sure you go to disappearance. So it was kind of like a self-check, and would be to keep me in line. So besides being very supportive, they were also allowing me to reflect and do a lot of self-reflection.
So they gave you lots of feedback to help you grow and get better.
Correct.
Okay, that's very, very good. That's very important. How would you inspire, or how would you think that you would inspire your students in your school to follow their dreams and to have those kinds of aspirations, be it political or not, to achieve greater things?
Well, I believe in any school, institution, or anywhere that everybody should be given their God-given potential. Everyone should be able to reach that level. And when we have assembly, or whenever I have an opportunity to speak to the students, and there's many things that trouble them at home, in school, in the community, and there's a lot of social baggage that students come with. And I remind them every day that this school, this institution, one is where you can find comfort, you can find a learning environment that they can be able to relate not only to their peers about, but to their teachers with as well. And if the teacher is not supportive, there's the counselor, there's the management team, there is a support system in school for them. Because once they leave primary level education, secondary education is more of an independent track. They have to be able to do things on their own, more accountable with their homework. And I also try to inspire them to reach whatever potential they have, figure out what they want in life, especially for our cycle 2-year 4 students. Some of them at the beginning of the year, when I ask the question, have no clue what school they want to go to, have no clue what schools are offering if they go to a sundial school or they go to a St. Martin Academy. Some aspire to go to St. Dominic High School, but academically have not been able to reach that potential yet, but they still have a year to gain those academic gaps that they might have missed. But it requires dedication and pushing of their own. They have to be self-disciplined. So throughout the year, I try to inspire them to reach their God-given potential, and that is the maximum that they can reach in any area, academics, sports, and those that are sports-oriented, we try to get them involved in baseball, in volleyball, in softball, and allow them not only if they can perform academically, but allow them to perform on the field as well. Because not everyone is academic, but others can make it in other aspects of life, musically as well.
So if we had to close off now, what would be one piece of advice you would share to those politicians that already represent us from your experience thus far?
Well, I would remind them not to forget where they've come from, because climbing the ladder to success is always easy once you reach the next step, but it's that trip down that is sometimes very painful. If you miss those steps, you can come straight back down to the beginning, and all those steps that you have missed along the way will remind you that you forgot me on the way back. So it is something that you need to be mindful of, and that is never forget where you've come from, the people you have passed in life, people that have supported you, people that have even been critical of you, that they have been able to provide some life lesson, whether it was positive or negative, that you learn from it. And never keep nothing personal, just learn from it and move on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. I learned a lot in this interview, lots that I didn't know. I'd like to thank you for your information and wish you well on your political aspirations.
Thank you.
That's it. Bye.